Hello, everyone. I know you're all getting connected to audio here, so we'll give you a second to do that, but we're glad to have you with us. At least in Chicago so far, it is a lovely evening, potentially some rain tonight, which gosh, we really, really need, but it's kind of the opposite of what I think you're doing down there in the South, Samantha. You guys may get way too much rain in this weekend, but we definitely need it. So thank you all for joining us. My name is Ginny, and I'm with Anderson's Bookshop, and I wanted to welcome you to this launch event for our local friend, Sharon Doering, to launch her newest book, Confess to Me. We were lucky enough to host Sharon for her launch last year as well. Virtual. She was one of our first, all right, we're going to give this virtual thing a try. So thanks for going on this ride with us, Sharon.
Thanks for having me.
Virtual obviously is not as much fun. It's a different kind of fun, but it is not quite as much fun as if we could all be in person and sharing that energy together. But thanks to everyone for joining us virtually here so that we can help launch this great book and keeping your eyes on another screen. I feel like that's all we've been doing, but we feel like there's light at the end of the tunnel and we'll get there. But we wanted to be sure to celebrate Sharon's new book this way. So thanks for being here. Just as an accessibility note, I will actually do this. We have turned on the live transcript feature. So if you would like to subtitles or a full transcript, which is provided by Zoom, you can choose that using that live transcript or CC button at the bottom of your own screen. So just so you guys know, that's available for you. You can turn it on and off at your own leisure. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Anderson's Bookshop is a independent bookstore. We have locations in Naperville and Downers Grove. We've actually been owned and run by the Anderson family for going on 6 generations now. So your support is really personal to us. It's really appreciated. We just like to take a moment to say thank you for that. It means quite a bit of us to us to have your support. In a normal year, in before times, as we like to call them, we would do over 400 in-person events a year. We're trying to do what we can to still bring you amazing authors in this virtual way. So if you haven't already checked out our website, andersonsbookshop.com, or any of our social media handles, you might not know the couple of other things we have coming up. Next week is Lori Frankel. Stacey Abrams is joining us again. The week after that, I think, no, it's next week too. It's like next week, the last full week of June somehow. I don't know how that happened, but Kate Moore, if you love the Radium Girls, her new book is The Woman They Could Not Silence, and it is also amazing. Don't miss that. Susan Elizabeth Phillips, another local friend of ours, will be joining us. And actually, we've just announced, and I've been making all kinds of song-inspired jokes about this, but Richard Marx is going to join us, which is going to be super fun. It makes my little 80s heart happy. So all kinds of fun stuff coming up to keep you entertained and in books for the summer. But as I mentioned tonight, we want to celebrate the release of Confess to Me by Sharon Doering, who lives in the Chicago area with her husband, Mark, their 3 kids, and a peculiarly, I can't say that word today, civilized dog, Indy. In her other life, she was a science professor, a biotech stock analyst, and a xenotransplantation researcher, which sounds like a made-up word, but maybe I'm just saying it wrong. But it sounds incredibly impressive. She's also been a good waitress, a mediocre bartender, and a terrible maid. And moderating for us tonight, we're happy to welcome back Samantha Downing, who had visited us at Anderson's a couple of years ago when her first book, My Lovely Wife, came out. She currently lives in New Orleans, where she's furiously typing away in her next thrilling book, which is going to come out next month and is called For Your Own Good. Thanks so much for joining us from down south there, Samantha.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks to you both for joining us. I am going to turn it over to you. We'll have a conversation as we go along. If anybody has questions, please drop those in the chat and we'll get to answering those a little bit later on.
Thank you, Ginny.
Thank you, Sharon. Congratulations on your book release.
Thank you.
Confess to Me just came out on Tuesday. So why don't you tell us what it's about?
Okay, so Confess to Me is a big secrets in a small town thriller. It's an exploration about toxic families and family secrets, and infatuation and the lies we bury to protect ourselves. In the story, Heather Horn, upon learning of her mother's murder, goes back to her birthplace, a small town in Wisconsin, to dig up the past. And she's with her husband and she's with their daughter and her stepson. And as she's digging, she has some wild revelations, which end up putting herself, her and her family in danger, because some people in town will do anything to keep their secrets buried. It's a 2 point of view thriller. It's Heather and her husband, Trevor, And so there's some juicy marriage secrets in there as well.
Okay, so this book takes place in Wisconsin. That's where they go to. Have you lived there? Is there a particular connection to Wisconsin?
No, actually, but there's just a fly just zooming by, of course. No, I mean, I've always lived in Illinois, either, in the city or the suburbs. And, but I'm from, visit Wisconsin. It's so close. Been there a bunch of times, been to some small towns in Wisconsin, but, visited some small towns in Illinois. So it's really like, it's kind of any real small town. The reason I said it in Wisconsin is because there's this part of the plot, or one of the plots, is exotic pets, the exotic pet trade. And Wisconsin is one of the states that still has pretty loose laws. There's been, over the years with different incidents that have happened, some states have kind of tightened their exotic pet laws, but Wisconsin is one where it's still pretty loose. And I'm familiar with Wisconsin. I've been there a lot. So that's where we're setting it.
I have been there a lot too. In fact, I used to have to work there, and a lot of people flew into Chicago and drove it because it was a 2-hour drive from Chicago. So this exotic pet trade, that's a really interesting part of the book. Do you have it? I guess you don't probably have exotic pets because you're in Illinois. What made you put that into the book? Where did that come from?
All right, so there's so many different inspirations for the book. One of them was this documentary. It was like 2010 or 2011, called "The Elephant in the Room," and it's like a phenomenal documentary. I don't know if it's on Amazon Prime or Netflix, but it's phenomenal, and it kind of details the exotic pet, the subculture of people who have exotic pets. And I believe this is, I watched it so long ago, but I think it detailed kind of what happened in Ohio, where there's a story like in 2010 or around then, of this one guy who had his own, like personal zoo, right, in his yard. And he had like 50 some animals. And he ended up there was all these personal problems, but this guy ended up killing himself, letting the animals loose and then killing himself. And there were like tigers and bears on the highway. And it's just like, watching it was like, what? This is crazy. And it was like, like one of those things that I saw that just, stuck with me. And I knew it was going to pop up in a book, like something where it's just always in there. So that's that subplot of the exotic pet trade came from watching that documentary. It's a really good documentary.
Okay. Yeah. Whenever anybody talks about exotic pets, I think of Michael Jackson, his zoo. Right? He had that crazy zoo at whatever his house was called, and I can't remember now. Now, was there something in particular that inspired the book in general, or something that you saw or read about? Or I know a lot of inspiration these days comes from real life because there's so much true crime out there.
Yeah. I mean, there was I don't know how it is for you, but for me, it's like a handful of different inspirations coming together, and just forming some sort of story. So the one inspiration from this book is another documentary, and this one's super old, like mid 90s or late 90s or early 2000. It was a Frontline special. I don't even know how I stumbled across it, but it's called The Search for Satan. Don't watch it if you're going to read my book. It's like kind of a spoiler. But it was another one of these documentaries that oh my God, I could not let it go. I was so focused on these people's stories. And that was the main inspiration. So, there was a bunch of different things. There was somebody I met was an inspiration. So somebody I knew, and then a couple things I wanted to explore in my own life. They're all in there,
Mm-hmm. How long does it take you to write the book?
So I'm not a pro like you. I'm still new, right? But for my first book, that took me years and years and years. It took me a long time, because I just took my time, because there was no reason not to, you know what I mean?
Right.
With this
No
book,
deadline.
there was no deadline. But with this book, I guess it took me maybe like I was writing it for maybe a half year. And then I got the contract for She Lies Close, and I dropped this and focused on the edits and all that because it was so new to me. It was very consuming. And then I picked this up. And so I think altogether it took me a year to write the first draft. And then like there was a lot of changes within the drafts. And, you know, draft to draft, there was a lot of change.
Okay.
A lot. So that maybe, so I guess the editing part took, I don't know, what, 6 months? Whatever the like limit that they gave me. Like at the end, at the end, I was like, but wait, I have some more changes. And they're like, no, because, you know, it's like all these edits and then like the copy editing and then the proofreading. And I'm like, but wait, I have a few more. And they're like, no.
Right. So for people that don't know or don't understand what we're talking about, you go through what we call rounds of edits when you turn in your manuscript and then your editor sends it back with notes of things to change. And you do this several times until the manuscript is complete. And at that point, it goes to copy edits, which is like grammar and that kind of thing. So we go through rounds of editing before the manuscript is considered finished. And we all go through it. So it takes a long time.
But this actually, the interesting thing, I don't know why this is, but the work in progress, what I'm writing now is like going real fast. So maybe because I'm like in this mindset of like I'm in that tight mindset, like time wise. So I'm going fast with this one. So maybe,
and you're working on your third one right now.
Yeah. And it's going much faster. So.
And do you plot your books or do you what we call pants them, like right by the seat of your pants, or do you plot them?
Well, I pants them, but I'm trying to plot, because with my first book and with this book, like the amount that I'm just throwing away, so many words, there's so much thrown away. And that like takes a long time, you know, all the throwaway and the rewrites and all that. So for the third one, I'm putting like a little bit of plotting in, a little bit. I'm still just like kind of flying, but I'm putting more plotting in.
Do you know how it ends?
Yeah.
Or when you wrote Confess to Me, did you know how it was going to end?
Yes.
Okay. So you do know the ending. So that's plotting if you know the ending.
Just barely, you know. I mean, you're right. I did know the ending. So I did have some idea of where it was going.
And when you're writing, do you write every day or Monday through Friday or?
Gosh, it's very, I don't have a schedule because just like day to day, I mean, week to week and with the kids and like summer throws things like all over the place. So I actually don't have a schedule, but I try to write. I try to write every day for like 2 hours, and usually like late morning or afternoon's the best time for me. So got like a phone call coming in. Hopefully you can't hear that.
We can hear the ringing.
You can. And the thing is, my desk is so messy. I can't find it. There we go. I turned it off. I couldn't find it. It was so messy.
I had another question.
Now,
I was so distracted by the phone.
Do you have a set schedule where you only write at certain times?
I only write in the morning typically, and I do write every day. So I write every day. Most of what I write is never published. The majority of what I write is never published. I write a lot that gets thrown out and that I throw out. It doesn't even become a book. So I don't plot or outline anything. So
are you one of those like 5 a.m. writers?
Not anymore. More like a 7 a.m. I used to be when I had a full-time job, I was writing early, but now this is my full-time job. So I don't have to get up at 5 in the morning.
That's very good. With the book launch, I did drop what I was doing. So I'm not writing at all. And it isn't, I mean, it's like unsettling because the writing is like my favorite part, you know? So dropping that so I could focus on this is like, it doesn't feel, you know, I don't know, it doesn't feel peaceful. So, you know, I do like to write every day, you know?
Right. The now tell us how did you get published? People always want to know how you get published. What was your path to getting published?
It was super long. It was a super, super long path, like 20 years. I was not one of those people who knew when they were like 10 years old that they wanted to be a writer. I never considered it. I just liked science. So I went to college for, you know, I studied science, got one job in science. So the job that I was in, I was a biotech stock analyst, where I was writing like these reports, like research reports on different biotech companies and pharmaceutical companies. And as I was writing them, I mean, that was the only part of the job that I liked was the writing part. And I would give it to my boss and he'd be like, this is too, like, you can't write this. This is like, he wanted it more dry. I was like trying to spice it up and like, you know, do all these crazy things. And so it was the one thing I liked about the job. And I was like, well, I really like writing. So at that time, it was in my early 20s where I like kind of as an escape from my job that I didn't like, I just started reading a ton, like reading, like that was my main thing I was doing, reading short stories. And then I sat down to write a short story and it was like magical. It was like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing I've ever done. I'm going to do this, like whatever. There was no like end goal in mind. It was just like, I love this. This is what I'm going to do. And then just as you know, wrote so many short stories, and then tried a novel. And the first novel I tried was horror and it was not good. And then the second novel I tried was a romance and that was like awful, like so awful, like, oh my gosh, so awful. And then the third novel I wrote was a PI novel, and that one was okay. That I had like some, you know, I would be sending stuff out and I got some good feedback on that one. And then I wrote a tech thriller, and that's where I got our agent, Barbara Puel. But she couldn't sell that one, and she couldn't sell my next two tech thrillers. So it was this like, you know, psychological thriller, She Lies Close, that she was able to sell. So it was super long, right? I mean, like it was 20 years and much rejection, but you know, and the funny thing is also, I don't know how you were, but I like kept it quiet. Like writing has always been like my secret, like family or something, where I always kept it quiet because I kind of knew it was going to be long and I didn't want to just like constantly talk about my years of rejection. Like, how's the writing going? It's going bad. Like, how's the writing going? More rejection. So I never really talked about it, like almost at all.
Yeah, I didn't talk about it either. And it's something you do. It's so solitary. You can't really talk about how you write. I mean, maybe to other writers, but even then, like we all know. So, I mean, it's just you and the page and that's it. And it's just a thing. And so,
yeah.
no, when I didn't tell anybody until my book was sold. I didn't even tell anybody when I got an agent. I didn't tell anybody,
okay,
because
so
then I didn't want people to ask. I didn't want people saying, well, what's going on? Well, what's going on? I had the agent, I had a publishing contract in hand, and then I told people about it. So it came like out of nowhere, really, for everybody.
I was like, what are you doing? That's so funny. Cause yeah, I mean, like that's the same thing. Cause you know, it's going to take a while. So if you tell people, then they're just going to be nice, right? Because they care about you and they're going to ask, how's it going? And it's like, it's not going.
Exactly.
Years and years until like, they're just like so sad for you. Yeah, you don't even say anything. Now, how long was your like writing journey, and how many did you write more books? Like, did you write a whole bunch of books before you sold the one? Like,
yes.
did you start with short stories or novels or what?
Yeah, mine was also a 20-year journey. So I wrote just as a hobby for 20 years. And before I got an agent, and I wrote My Lovely Wife, my debut, that was my 12th novel. So the other ones I didn't have an agent for I never tried to sell them or anything. And so it took 20 years, just 20 years of me basically writing in a corner. Everybody pays their dues one way or another. You always pay your dues. So some people pay them when they're doing their querying and they have to go through 200 rejection letters. Some people sit in a corner and write for 20 years. So, yeah.
That's funny that it was your secret life too, that nobody knew.
Exactly.
It's like the secret family.
Yeah, it is. It is, because it's not like you play music and you share it with people, it's a whole different type of a thing. So, and people sort of dismiss writing. I find if you tell people you're a writer, they tend to say, "Oh, I'm thinking of writing a book." As if you can just sit down and write a book and get it published. And there's probably very few people in the world that could do that. So because everybody has a computer, everybody thinks they can do this.
Yeah. And it'll take a while.
Everybody can do it, but it's going to take a while.
It's going to take a while. Now, your books that you didn't get an agent, you said your 11 previous books?
Yeah.
12. Were they all similar to like what you're writing now? These dark, like funny?
No, they were all over. They were all different kinds of genres. It probably took me that long to find the voice. Yeah. And so we always talk about that in writing, finding your voice. So I was all over the place with genres, but thrillers were always what I read the most of.
Did you write a bad romance? Like me?
I actually never did romance. I did horror. I did coming of age. I did literary. I did a couple thrillers, but not as many. And the original one I did that was a thriller was one that was actually very much like Dexter before Dexter came out, about a guy that was a serial killer who killed the bad guys. It was kind of very Dexter-esque, but it was different than Dexter, but had that same serial killer villain or protagonist.
Yeah. Did you feel like Dexter stole your thunder?
No, that book wasn't very good. The book wasn't very good. It was, it wasn't written very well. So I wasn't worried. I wasn't thinking it would really get published.
Yeah. Okay. That's amazing. So for you as well, like that 20 years. And then you, so actually I'm going to hold up your book. This is the UK cover. This is Samantha's book that's coming out next month.
Yeah. July 20th.
So this book, it's so classic Samantha Downing. It's like so dark, but funny and like fun, like entertaining, like fun, like a roller coaster. While I read this, I was smiling a lot of the time because I was having so much fun. And actually your book, watching each of these characters, actually I'll let you tell about the book in a second, but watching each of these characters in their own bubble. And as the reader, I felt like I was watching this mesmerizing, disastrous symphony play out. They couldn't see it, but I could see it. And it's so classic you. Now, do you have a hard time, or with you working on maybe your fourth book or I don't know what you're working on now, but do you ever worry about can I write another Samantha Downing? Do you know what I mean? It's that same can I write another classic Samantha Downing? That's because all your books are so different, but they have that, they're so similar in that dark humor and just so entertaining.
So sometimes I do. I mean, I kind of have a never ending, I have so many ideas that I kind of I don't run out of ideas, but not all of those ideas can be turned into a book. Okay. So sometimes I start to write it and it doesn't work, and a story has to open up and become bigger because it has to be a book length. I mean, and
Yeah,
some of
yeah.
the ideas I have, they're just too contained, and they don't grab me. I don't know. I guess because I don't plot anything. Sometimes I just decide I don't like it.
Right, right. Because so can you, like, how have you been practicing talking about this book? Because I find I always have to
Okay,
like practice
a
what
brief
I'm gonna
synopsis
say.
before we get back to Confess to You.
Okay.
A brief thing. So this book takes place at a private school called Belmont Academy in the Northeast, and Teddy Crutcher has just been named Teacher of the Year, and it's about time in his eyes. It's about time that he's Teacher of the Year, because he knows his job and he knows what the kids need to learn, and he can do it well. And if everybody would just stay out of his way, he would just be able to do that. So if the parents and the other teachers would just step aside and let him do what he needs to do, that would be great. But unfortunately, they keep getting in his way. So that's kind of the setup of it. So if you've read a book of mine before, you kind of know what's going to go next. This one has multiple points of view. The first two books did not. So you get the story from several different people's perspective, including one of the students that he has a problem with, a kid named Zach. So it was a lot of fun to write. And yeah, I mean, I personally do not like stories that are bleak and depressing, so mine are always have that dark humor in them. I think for me, it makes it more entertaining as an escape. So that's I try to write the kind of books that I would want to read. So that's the goal. And I think and maybe it's the same for you when you were going through your writing process. Your first books aren't always the kind of books that you want to read. Your first books are like you just learning or getting something out, or your short stories or whatever. But eventually you get to start writing the actual books that you personally would want to read. Did you find that to be?
Yeah, and even like from book to book, the change, I'm finding myself so fascinated. like my first book. So the previous books, the changes from those to She Lies Close. But She Lies Close, that was the thriller that I wanted to read. Like I wanted to read about, this mother who was just being stretched like so far, and just the minutia of just what stretches her. And I like, that was the thriller I wanted to read. And then the next book, I mean, of course it was inspired by all the things, like a story I wanted to tell. But as I was editing it and doing more drafts, I was keeping more of like thriller readers in mind, like before, when I was writing She Lies Close, I was in a bubble. I was not on social media. I was very, very in a bubble. So as I was finishing up Confess to Me, I was out of that bubble, and I was listening to like what thriller readers like they want a lot of twists. They want like a wild ending. So that was informing my edits. Maybe not my first draft. My first draft was like with the door closed, like the story I wanted to tell, but the edits were, being informed in a different way. And then the one I'm working on now, similar, like it's almost like, I'm just very aware of the reader. I don't know. So have you like found any changes as in each book? Like, are you trying to do something different? Are you like trying to pivot a little bit, or is it all like a similar, like its own experience? And I don't know. Like,
yeah, I
how
mean,
is it for you?
The more you hear from readers, or the more you read reviews, the more it gets into your head. So you have to, and it's like a filtering process. You can't take one review and say that's the review. Like, you can't take, or whether it's good or bad, you can't say like that person's opinion is more important than everybody else's opinion. It's all, everybody has their own opinion and they all have equal weight. So you can't pick and choose. It's just, and you can't please everybody. Yeah. So when people said about My Lovely Wife, oh, it's disturbing, it's too dark, well, then it's not for you. I mean, it's for other people, but it's not for you, which is fine because I don't read a lot of romance books. They're not for me. So so I'm not going to have a good opinion of that. So I try not to let it influence the actual writing. But you mentioned twists, and you mentioned your first book. I have to say, for She Lies Close, when I think about that book, I think about the voice of the mom in that book, because she was so, and if anybody's in here that hasn't read that book, it is so good. That she's this good mom, but in her head, she's not always thinking the nicest things about her children, which is exactly how I picture motherhood, where you're saying something nice, but in your head, you're thinking, shit. I can see this. And I thought the mom was so perfect. And because you have that humor in your books too. And then when I think of this book, Confess to Me, I actually think it's so atmospheric in the small town, and every character adds to it, whether it's how they meet them or the characters with the exotic pets. Everything adds to this crazy atmosphere, which is why I think in my blurb I compared it to Ozark, which is so much like that. It's about the atmosphere of Ozark, that TV show. So was that conscious when you were doing it, when you were creating it?
Yeah, and I love that blurb. Like, I love that. And it's so funny when you hear an author or a reviewer, like a blogger, describing your book in a better way than you can. Like, I was reading like, there was some blogger who wrote a review of Confess to Me, and I'm like, wow, that's a great synopsis. Like, that's a better synopsis than I can come up with. So it's kind of like amazing, like hearing other people describe it. And oh yeah, like that's so cool. The Ozark comparison. I love that. But yeah, I think so. I mean, I was picturing this, small town by a river, and yeah, that it was the atmosphere and all the people that was always coming. It was always coming. Oops, I've got another noise. Got all these noises coming in. Oh my gosh. But yeah, that was totally a big part. And it was always there. And I was like aware of it and making sure I described it here and there. Yeah, the atmosphere was a big part. I don't know why I have like alarms going off on my phone. Sorry. I'm back. I'm not distracted anymore.
The twist, the twists are important in thrillers. The twists are, I know there's been a lot of discussion on social media among authors between what's a reveal and what's a twist. And the reveals are, giving the reader a piece of information they didn't have, and a twist. A true twist is something that turns the whole story upside down, that makes you think whatever you thought you believed about the story, it just got flipped on its head. So yes. Is that something that you knew in advance, your twists and your reveals, or is that something that's totally you're pantsing when you're doing it?
Pantsing. And also, gosh, I mean, it is hard to remember all the changes because there's so many, but I didn't realize until I was almost through my first draft that I was going to have 2 point of views. It was just going to be the one. And then like midway through, then I realized like, okay, I need this other point of view because I want to do different things with it. So yeah, those are all, I mean, pants. Like I'll go through and then in later drafts, like adding in all those little, maybe like, clues or false clues, or, you know what I mean? Adding all that in so that it looks like, it looks like you knew what you were doing. Right.
Right. And so when you read a thriller and you figure out the twist, does that bother you or does it not bother you? Do you not want to figure it out?
Yeah, I don't really want to, but I don't care. And also I don't need a twist. I don't need a twist, and I don't need a wild ending. I love it. I love like what if I come upon a twist, I'm like, oh, that's really great, right? It's like so fun, or a wild ending, so fun, but I don't need it. So I don't think I'm like the characteristic thriller reader. because
Mhm.
I don't need those things. Like I'm all in it. I'm in it for the character and like just raising the stakes, raising the stakes. I don't need the twists or anything like that. But I do enjoy that. You know, I mean, I'll take it. You know, I love it. Yeah, I guess as I'm reading, I don't want to figure out. I don't want to figure it out, but it's okay if I do, because like I feel like I'm reading as more of a like a student, like learning, like okay, what different authors are doing and like how did they do that and what, you know, so I'm okay with whatever.
Mhm.
What about you when you're reading? Like, do you want to be, you want like the rug pulled out from under you? Like what?
Yeah, I do. I want it. Sure. I mean, I'm a thriller reader, so I want the same things all the readers want. You want to think you have it figured out and then be wrong and then have it, because you always want the author to be smarter than you.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
their
yeah,
job.
yeah,
You
yeah,
want the
yeah,
author
yeah,
to be able to do their job. So
yeah,
it doesn't totally ruin it if I figure it out. It doesn't ruin it, but it's better if I don't figure it
yeah.
out.
Well, because you want them to keep reading, right?
Right.
You want them to keep reading and wondering what's going to happen. Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, of course, you don't want to be on like page 100 and be like, I know how this is all going to go down, because then what's the point?
Right, exactly. And there have been a couple times I've been wrong when I think, oh, I know exactly where this is going. And I'm, I'm, I was so sure I skipped to the end of the book and then found out I was wrong. It was like, now I've just ruined it. So,
That's so funny.
yeah.
Now, actually, so what inspired, okay, not what inspired, but when you pick your topics, when you pick your stories and your plots center around something that's so familiar, right? Like a road trip in your second book, or in this, like teachers and like the whole teaching environment, but you like flip them on their head. Like, are you trying to, I mean, is that just like random that happens? Or are you like looking for a topic that is like, because that keeps coming up, like where you have something familiar and you just totally flip it. Like,
No,
is there
that's
anything?
definitely deliberate, because
Yeah,
I have to, because the stories can get so out there. I have to start with something that's familiar just as a grounding point. And so when I look at a high school, that's what I see. Other people might look at high school and see, a lot of people that are hardworking and potentially a what do you call it? A predator. That's what they're always looking for, right? Is teachers that are predators. And so that's pretty much what the focus is on when you're looking at teachers, because they're around kids all day. So you are on the lookout for predator. I see psychopaths. So I see what happens if you have a teacher that's a psychopath, and go, okay. And then I go from there. So,
in the teaching thing, it's like so ripe it's such a ripe topic, because there's so much potential for like crazy and dark and all that, because teaching is one of those few jobs where you're like the king or queen of the classroom, and you have these subordinates that can't really tell you like you're a jerk or you're not, I mean, luckily a lot of teachers, most teachers are in it for the right reasons, and they're generous and all that, but it really is this like weird power structure. So the setting itself is like so right for that.
mhm.
It is really,
And you
it's a
don't
great
know
topic.
that's the problem with psychopaths or sociopaths. You don't know they are until something goes very wrong. So you don't know that that's the kind of person you're dealing with. So how do you spot them? You can't until
Yeah,
they do something. So
yeah.
it's always fun.
It's fun. So in your titles are like these catchphrases, and I just they're like so great. And I picture it like you have, every time you hear like a phrase, somebody say a phrase, you like write it down and like pin it up on your wall, so that for the next book, you're like, okay, what's a phrase where I can make it really creepy? I'm wrong about that, right? You don't have a wall of.
I don't have a wall of titles. No,
But were
I
these,
actually, For He Started It, that was the sibling book, and I was just trying to think of things that go with siblings. And when you're a kid, you're always blaming your sibling. You know, he started it, she started it, whatever. So that seemed to work. And for this one, it was between this and I think the other one that I had come up with was in your best interest, or something like something that would, you know, that it's for the good of the kids. So, you know, it's in your best interest to do this, or it's for your own good. So, I just try to, once a book is written or most of it is written, I start thinking of what the phrases like that, or Googling, you know, the phrases and trying to come up with something.
So they're like at the end, like you're done with the book.
I never title it in the beginning. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Because you're, again, like your titles are so classic Samantha Downing. You know what I mean? They're those catchphrases that you wouldn't think have a dark edge until you see them on a cover. And then you're like, ooh, that's dark. like he started it. I don't know. It's just like something kids say, but then it's like on the cover of the book and it's like, ooh, he started it.
My lovely wife can be the title for 5 different genres of books. I mean, that's not a thriller title at all. It just had a big knife on the cover.
Yeah, so, but on the cover, you give it this twist where it's like such a dark title.
Right. Now, how are your covers done? How did the Confess to Me cover come about?
So they just give me a cover, and like both covers, I loved them. So there wasn't any problem where I was, where I had to say like, I don't like this. I don't know how that goes. I mean, I don't know if you know how that goes, but for both covers, I just got it in an email and I was like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Like I could never do that, like read a whole book and come up with this just one image that conveys that in some way. So both covers, when they came to me, I loved them. And I was just like, thanks, I love it so much. Like, it's amazing. And that was the end. That was the end of it.
That was it. That's easy.
That was it. Do you get two? Do you get 2 or 3 for each? Yeah,
I get two. And then they ask me. I don't make the final choice. I'm just asked my opinion. But
okay.
So far, everybody's been on board with the. Sometimes I suggest small changes, like if something's not clear or it needs to be clarified. But so far, on everybody's picked the same ones, like that, because ultimately, I think sales and marketing has the most say in book covers. So what the author thinks isn't, and that's their job, right? They sell the books. So.
Yeah, they know what they're doing.
Yeah,
because they do. I mean, they do a good job. They know what they're doing. Now, has there been any part of your, or I guess, what is the most challenging part of what has been the most challenging part of your whole writing journey? Has there been one where there's been like a moment or like just something that kind of like put some sort of roadblock there for you?
Book 2, writing He Started It, I wrote an entire book that we threw out in between My Lovely Wife and He Started It. So that ate up a lot of time, and the He Started It had to be written very quickly. And hopefully I don't ever have to do that again.
How quick did you have to write it?
I had like 3 months.
Oh.
And I didn't even have an idea, let alone like a concept of a story. So I don't know how. Yeah, so that's where that one came from. And then this year, book 4 is the one I have been working on since last March, and I have written and thrown out 5, 6, 7 ideas easily, like over the course of the pandemic, because I turned in For Your Own Good right before the shutdown started. It was done just in the beginning of March of last year. And ever since then, I've just been stumbling around writing and throwing things out. And so now I've written book 4, but it was almost like a waste of a year. It was almost a year before I think it was January when I finally had the final idea for book 4. So and then all of those months of writing were just gone, just nothing.
And each time you got to a certain point and you're like, no, I don't know where this is going, or like it's not enough for a whole book.
Or
And then
wasn't
you
working,
started
or
over.
my editor didn't like it, or it didn't think it was right, or it was, I didn't like it, it wasn't, or yeah, it was just a variety of reasons. Or I heard about a book that was similar, somebody else was writing one that had a very similar plot line. I mean, it can be almost anything, but it was, I don't even know how many ideas, easily 100,000 words, easily, that just gone. And but you know, it's all
That's how it goes.
practice. It's all practice.
Yeah, nothing's wasted. Nothing's wasted.
No, I don't consider it a waste.
No.
It was just such a huge block of time. I felt like I
Yeah.
could have written 2 books in that time, and
Yeah.
literally it produced nothing. So that's the frustrating part, I think, is like, if one of those had worked, I could be so much further ahead.
Right. And with He Started It, you had to write it in 3 months. How many months did you have for editing?
We edited for, I think, about 4 months, 4 or 5.
Okay.
It was a longer editing period than the first draft process. Yeah, I want to say 4.5 months, something
Okay.
like that. Yeah.
Okay. I just looked in the chat. Actually, I should open the chat. I just saw my sister in there asking questions. And
Oh, there's Ginny.
yeah, if writing a book is one of our personal dreams, what advice would you give to start the process, or should we pick a different dream? No, I think that a lot of people, you hear, like, statistically, a lot of people would like to write a book. And then if that's something you like, right? If you sit down and you write and you love it, and it's like your top hobby, right? It's like your top, it comes before, like, do I want to watch a movie? Do I want to, you know what I mean? Do I want to go, do whatever? And it's like the top hobby. It's something you love so much and it makes you feel so good. Then you stick with that, right? I mean, like, right? I mean, you have to do what you feel makes you happy, or like settles you. I find writing brings me like a peace of mind. Like, there's just getting all those words out. It makes me so happy that if somebody said to me, you're not going to ever publish a book, I think I would still do it. I mean, that's what I did, right? I mean, you did it for years and years and years. And I do remember with She Lies Close, when we sent it out to, oops, I almost left the meeting. I was trying to close the chat. When we sent it out to editors, the first round, and they said it was too dark, and it was too dark. The first, what me and Barbara sent out was too dark. I had that, just that sense, like, that it hit me for the first time, like, I really might not sell a book. Like, I really might not. I mean, I've been doing this 20 years. I thought She Lies Close. I'm like, this is a really good book. And the first round of editors said, no, it's too dark. And then I had that feeling like, well, it might not happen. Like, and it was a kind of a desperate feeling, because I kind of like, I always assumed I'd have a book published, kind of assumed that. And so there was this like desperate feeling, and luckily at the same time I had read Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic, where, and like, kind of the theme of that book is like, your writing does not owe you anything. It does not owe you anything, and that was like what I needed to hear at the time. And I was like, yeah, you're right. It doesn't owe me anything. So I'm going to keep doing it. And then, like, that's that. So, and then if you do get the book deal, well, then yay, you're lucky, right? I don't know. Have you read that book, Big Magic?
I have not read that book. No, I always assumed I would never be published, which is why I never tried to get published. I'm only published because of a friend of mine. A friend of mine sent this book to an agent, so I didn't do it, and that's how I ended up getting my agent, and then having a book contract. It seemed like impossible to me. But I'm looking at the question: if writing a book is one of your personal dreams, is one of our personal dreams. What advice would you give? Okay, well, writing a book and getting published are two totally different things. So if you want to write a book, sit down and write a book. And honestly, the best advice I can give you is to write. If you do not love sitting down and writing, this is not for you, because you need to put in the time writing to even learn how to write in the first way. It's like practicing anything. You have to put the time into practice. So if you don't love sitting down at the computer and writing, then I would say pick a different dream. If you do love sitting down, then you can write as many books as you want on your computer. You can, and then getting published again, a whole different process.
So when you were writing each of those books that you didn't even send out to an agent, you were writing them for you, and then did you like share them with anybody, or no, they were just for you? And then you're like, okay, the next book.
No, I had some friends read some of them, but there's nobody who's read all of them. It was just for me.
My favorite part and least favorite part, my favorite part is writing the new story, like writing the new story, because it feels so magical and it's so fun. And my least favorite part is the business aspect, right? I mean, it's like the business aspect, feeling like, oh gosh, I should do more. I should do more on social media. I should do more to like, sell myself. I should, that kind of like that. I haven't figured out that balance yet about like, because I do feel like I should do more. So I guess I'm not feeling satisfied with myself. So that the business aspect and the social media aspect, even though I do love social media, like getting like Instagram is so fun, and being surrounded by other people that are like me, that love books and love reading and love writing is so fun. It's also like, just like, I got to figure out the balance.
Well,
what about for you?
It's the metaphor though, too, right, Sharon? That like you can love social media. It doesn't mean you're good at creating content for social media, and not you specifically, but general person. I think that's the metaphor sometimes for writing. Like you can really love to read books and be around people, which doesn't mean you should own a bookstore, because there is that business side. It's rather important.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate into writing yourself. I think it's the point of what part of it do you enjoy? If you can, as Samantha said, like creating that story is different than enjoying that story, right? Like they're two different skill things. So
Samantha, what's your favorite and least favorite part?
My favorite is definitely the writing, and my least favorite is everything that's not writing.
Actually, though, I actually like the editing even. So I'm enjoying the editing, even though that's kind of like brutal. Like, like this isn't good. You got to take this out or add this. I even enjoy that part. So you don't like the editing?
Editing, that's a love hate. That's definitely, I mean, I appreciate that it's making the book better, but I don't know that I enjoy going through it all. Yeah.
The self-publishing. I self-published two books. I took them off because I'm like, when it was like a business decision, like, okay, let's like launch my first book is like my first book, because my other books that were on self-publishing that were out there were tech thrillers, so they were different. But I think that some people really enjoy it. It's kind of like it's all very particular. There are some self-published authors that are really great at marketing themselves, and they really love being in control of it all. And there's some that love it. I like the collaboration. I do like the editor. I mean, you can have, you also hire an editor if you're self-publishing, but I really like the collaboration with traditional publishing. But I think like anything, it's all about like what makes you happy. What do you think, Samantha?
I think in self-publishing, it depends on what your goals are. If you just want the book out there self-published, then you can do that. If you want people to actually know that it's out there and it to sell, you've got to hire all the people that you get through a traditional publisher. You need to hire an editor. You need to hire a copy editor. You need to hire a professional to do the book cover. You need to hire, I mean, all of that. And then if you don't know how to do marketing, you need to pay for it. So
Yeah.
that's only, it's very crowded out there. So unless you've got some other that'll make your book stand out, it's really hard for anybody to get their book noticed, whether it's traditionally published or self-published. So if you have the means or you have a lot of friends that are willing to help, you can do it, but you definitely need to do all of that to put out a professional product that's going to appeal to people who read a lot and who read professional products a lot. So
Yeah. That can be pricey.
Either way you do it, they both have their pros and cons, whether it's traditional or self-publishing, but that's what you're getting into if you want to try to actually make money and sell books at self-publishing.
Yeah, it depends on what your goals are. It depends on what your goals are.
That's what I was going to say. The expectations are really different. And to do your homework, to know if you're going to self-publish, since you have to do all that stuff yourself, or hire a professional, professionals that know how to do it for a book, because somebody who knows how to do marketing isn't necessarily going to know how to market a book, or to know what's already out there. It doesn't just mean guilting your family and friends into buying 5 copies each, right? Though you should do that too. But on the bookstore side, I mean, we, to have it on our shelves, it needs to look like a professional book, and it can't just be, a spiral bound. We've had, some that are like spiral bound and tiny font or ginormous font and not spaced well. And it's not going to look, you have to look at what's next to it, right? What's the customer going to be deciding that between that and something else? And that's takes expertise to know.
Mm-hmm.
But it absolutely can be, it can be successful. It can, on its own merits, it can be successful because it turns into a traditional publishing. And then, that's what E.L. James, right? That's just how things sort of go. So, well, does anyone else have questions out there? Is anything else in the chat here? I appreciate both of you taking the time to be here. And I know, Sharon, you stopped in the store this week to sign all those copies of the book. So we can ship those anywhere in the US. So do feel free, if you are not local, to put an order for, you can have your own signed copy, and you can pre-order Samantha's new book as well. We'd be happy to ship that to you or put one aside for you if you are local to us. Yay! See, and that's an example of knowing how to do marketing. Because having the books, right? Anything else that our authors that you would like to wrap up with tonight?
I'm good. Thank you, Samantha, for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was a blast.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
And congratulations again. And everybody needs to get Sharon's book. So
thank you. And actually on the subject of marketing, it's kind of funny. A tabloid in the UK just said, my book is for fans of Tiger King. And I'm like, that's maybe a good hook. Maybe I should have been using that for like the past 3 months.
Tiger King, that was a big, that was a really well known.
That was a thing. That's for sure.
That had a lot of viewers. So I'll take those viewers, pretty please.
Right. Well, and that's the famed, it's this meets that, right? That's the blurb bonanza that publishing likes to do. It's, Game of Thrones meets, Sleeping Beauty, and you're like, what the heck does that even mean? But everybody does that, Well, wonderful. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to be with us. And Sharon, congratulations. Happy book birthday this week.
Thank you.
Yes, we love you to be able to attend from Canada as well. So thank you for joining us. This is definitely one of the perks, is we might not have been able to get Samantha and Sharon in the same room in person without a lot of coordination, right? So we're really glad to have everybody join us. And please do go ahead and order a copy if you don't already have one, or stop by the store. We are open. We'd love to see you. So, all right, everybody stay safe out there. Thank you, both of you, for being here. And hopefully we'll see you in person soon.
Thank you.
All right. Happy reading, everybody. Good night.